Hello and welcome to the Our Metroidvania podcast. I am Professor Q.
And this is Cauldrath from the Our Metroidvania subreddit and Discord.
Hi, I'm Master. I'm also from there.
And what we have in the background right now is Unbound Worlds Apart, and that is just to get us started, since we're going to talk about some boss fights today. I heard a bing from Google Hangouts, and I'm like, did I not turn my Google Hangouts on or off? And then I just remembered that sometimes when I'm playing, I have Google Hangouts on, and so they'll get caught in the footage. Usually when I do these footage recordings, my plan, if I ever do a video review, is to cut the sound out anyway, so I usually don't worry too much about things like that in the background. So anyway, today we're going to talk about boss fights, and we wanted to make sure that we had gave people a chance to get into the stream before we got into the meat of everything. So this is Unbound Worlds Apart. It is what I would call a Metroidvania Lite or a low-fit Metroidvania. It's kind of a linear platform hybrid. You get a map eventually, and you get ability upgrades, but the focus is on these kind of linear puzzle platforming challenges. So you summon these little circles, portals into the other world or the world apart, and this particular circle has kind of a guacamole effect where the other world sometimes has platforms that don't exist in your current world, but this game kind of plays with the idea a little bit more. Like one world that you go to has the opposite gravity of your current world, so you'll fall up and stuff like that. It's interesting. So yeah, I've been talking too much. Do you guys have anything you want to bring up before we get into the main course of tonight?
Not specifically. So yeah, it looks like this is very puzzle platformer-y. I don't know what else to say about that.
It's a good game. I liked it. I put my review on it just this Monday. I gave it 3.5. Main reasons being is that it's not particularly... There are a lot of really kind of slow moments where it's more just kind of going through rote execution of pretty obvious mechanics or puzzles.
So it's an activities platformer?
Yeah, but it's kind of it's zen, kind of zen. It's relaxing to play, regardless of the fact that it doesn't really have much to. Like sometimes it can be a little bit slow.
Yeah, it seems like the toggling back and forth is a little bit clunky.
Yeah, this particular type of circle is probably the least interesting because you kind of have to just scan to see if things are there. Like in Guacamelee, you could always see an outline of something that you could affect.
Yeah.
Whereas this game does not have that feature.
Then maybe you shouldn't lose things.
Yeah, it's nice when things are like predictable what will happen when you do something, and like when you're trying to do anything puzzly.
Right. I don't feel like this game ever gets to the point where it's like obtuse or anything. It doesn't cost anything to do the little circles. One thing I like about this circle system versus the Guacamelee is you don't necessarily have to affect everything around you. You can just affect areas.
Right.
Which does play into some interesting use cases later in the game. I didn't get through this game and feel like that it didn't use its mechanics, which can happen a lot when you have something unique like this. I think it did enough satisfying things with it that the game doesn't feel too short, even though it is only 5 hours long. I love these little butterfly things that turn into monsters. But on that same token, it also doesn't really get very difficult.
So yeah, it looks like you don't have a health bar. Is it just like instant kills?
Yeah, everything is instant death, which was another thing that I thought might be a problem later on, but it just doesn't get hard enough for that to be a problem. Also, it has the Ori 2 system of checkpoints where basically anytime you land, it gives you a checkpoint, so you never really have to worry about going back too far in this game.
My PC is returned to me.
Did we lose you there, Master?
Yes.
Yeah, I kept hearing the like somebody came in sound.
So my screen went black for a moment, and then my audio messed up, and then Discord wouldn't connect. It was very weird, and I had to restart Discord.
So real quick, since the footage is playing, what I'm showing right now is, so we're going to go into talking about the bosses. This is Elliot Quest. I wanted to kind of show off the different powers that you got. So the first one you get is this wind power that makes you basically invulnerable, and when you ram into things, it does things. And then the second power you get is this fire spell, which of course, you know, being a Zelda-like, its main purpose is to light torches to activate switches. Then there's this earth power, which is garbage, that just throws a rock straight up. But every once in a while... What's that?
How's that a power? For a rock?
No, you have to kill a guardian to get this.
It spawns the rock. You don't have to like pick up rocks.
And then this is the ice power, which completely replaces the fire power later on because it's just OP against things by freezing them. And you can use it to make platforms like this. So that's kind of like the main premise of the game, is that he's got this curse that some demon is going to take him over later on. And he's trying to get out of it by killing all of these guardians and or stealing their elemental powers. So anyway, this is the demon. And the reason why I brought up those 4 elemental powers is because I wanted to talk about how they're not used at all in the final boss fight of the game, even though like the whole game is about you getting these guardian powers so you can defeat the demon that's going to take you over.
You're using the wind power right here.
So you use the wind power everywhere in this game because it makes you invulnerable. So I've kind of cut out parts where I've paused the game during the boss fight, which can happen a lot when I'm playing because I have kids.
Why would you want to power up your body if a demon's gonna take it over?
It's not power up your body. Well, he actually says that. He's like, well, thank you for killing all of the guardians for me. So yes, you are correct, Master. That is probably not the wise thing to do. So anyway, this is my first attempt on this boss fight, and you'll notice that I'm not doing any damage to him at all. And let's see if you guys can figure out how you're supposed to beat this guy.
Mario Stomp.
Mario Stomp? I wonder if I try that.
Guess some sort of projectile that you have to like reflect back at him.
So that's a good call. Why would you immediately go to that, just out of curiosity?
That's how bosses work that don't let you hurt them yourself.
I guess that's an astute observation. Oh, by the way, this is an instant death move, so if you mess this up, then it's over. So all of these phases that you're watching right now, you cannot hurt the boss. How's it going, AnimeRR? That is a bad place for the chat box. Let me see if I can move that somewhere. I'll move it down here for now, and I'll move it up there when it's a problem. Yeah, we're all doing pretty good. So yeah, all of these phases that you're watching right now, you cannot hurt the boss at all.
Okay.
And we've been watching this for 3 minutes, and now this is the phase that you're allowed to hurt him. And how it works is that you have to shoot those blocks so that they're transparent, and then you use the wind power, and that reflects it. And if you're not at the right angle, it still doesn't hit him, and you can't damage him. So you'll see that I've done.
Bad.
You'll see how I've done 1 health bar to him this entire time, and now he's back into his invincible. You can't do anything except dodge phases.
This does not seem that fun.
This is the final boss.
This is what I usually refer to as like a taking turns style boss. It's just the boss's turn here is excessively long.
It'd be better if the phase where you actually damage him isn't janky and unintuitive, which it seems to be.
Yes, exactly. So the whole reason why I wanted to have this stream about boss fights is so I could rant about how terrible this boss is. Literally the reason why I wanted to do this.
Hey, it looks like it just starts out on the phase where you can hurt him, though.
It does start out on the phase where you can hurt him. So you can knock off probably 3 of his health bars if you can pull it off perfectly. But then, as you will see, because I think I skipped straight to my successful attempt at this point, which I believe is 8 minutes long.
Oh no.
As you can see, there is no trigger that, like, it doesn't go in a pattern of, okay, he does this, this, and this, and then you can hurt him, right? It's apparently completely random, so you could be there for 10 minutes waiting for an opportunity to hurt him.
What about the big cubes that fall down?
Nope,
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
they do not reflect.
What do the green things do?
So the green things will refill your mana, and that's important because you need mana in order to use your wind power. And the wind power is required to fight it. So at least the boss had the foresight of allowing that. But the other factor here is that like reflecting it doesn't automatically hurt him. You have to get it at the right angle, and not having enough opportunities to practice that can make this very frustrating.
Sometimes it seems like you're hitting him and it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it takes like 3 cubes to do 1 health bar or something like that. I think you can knock out 3. So however many cubes he has, divide that by 3, and that's what you get. And now, reminder that this I think is my it might be my successful attempt or my second attempt before I was finally successful. So this is after I practiced for a while. What we're watching right now. So anyway, I showed all those powers at the beginning of this because I feel like if you're going to build up your final boss, like one of the ways this game presents its story is through like text as you're playing, which I think I showed some Elliot Quest last week.
Yeah.
And there was some text that popped up. And they kind of build up this boss throughout the entire game. So it feels like it should have used the puzzle things that you had been learning up to that point during the boss fight. Okay, so that was a really good round right there.
Yes. Good work. Past Q.
I was actually kind of impressed with myself on my first attempt. I thought I did a lot worse than I did, but when I was watching, I was like, no, I'm not doing bad. It's just the boss is just so unintuitive.
Yeah, I think that if a boss has like a random set of attacks that it chooses from, then every single attack needs to like have an option of the player being able to damage them. Now you can have some that are like triggered by low health, like with like Nightmare King Grim. He like does the like puffer fish thing when he like gets to like half health or whatever it is, but that's like not one of the random ones he chooses, and all the rest of them you can hit him during.
Yeah, those are intervals, and they also, I mean, they like swell the music and stuff. They're there for presentation.
So
And a pace breaker.
I actually don't mind the dodge phase, attack phase design per se, but it is really frustrating when you never know when it's going to actually become available, you know, or like how long do you have to put up with this?
Yeah.
Before
like,
you get to do it
theoretically,
again.
it could like just last forever if you're really unlucky.
And in general, I think it's probably more frustrating to have these kind of phases where you can't damage them at all. And it's better to have, like you said, Nightmare King Grim, where, yeah, you can technically damage him. It's just really not a good idea.
If your boss has random phases, then you really need to make sure there aren't any... People shouldn't be waiting for that one good phase.
Right.
Because if they do, then it feels sloggy, and they, you know, if they don't get it for a while, they get a lot of other phases, it will feel very bad.
Like, I think all of these attacks aren't bad, and as far as, like, the attack design is concerned, this is a fine boss. It's just, I just wish your arrows just hurt it. Like, I really
like,
don't...
like, each attack has a certain element that can hurt it.
Yeah,
Like,
or each phase has a different element. Would be exactly how I would have thought to design this.
Some of these phases do look boring, though. You're just standing there for 5 to 10 seconds waiting for the cubes to disappear. They
Right.
don't have any danger.
Yeah, and this one, once you figure out you can shoot that wall, it's a complete joke. Although I did get nicked there. But yeah, what Cauldrath said, I think, is perfect, is that each phase could have a different element that you're required to use. Or even better, go beyond the 4 elements. You also get, like, yeah, you saw that fairy power that I used briefly in one of the scenes. Use all the tools that you have on your final boss. I can kind of understand maybe what he was going for is that this guy is so strong that the only thing that can hurt him is himself by reflecting it back. But they also built up the whole Guardians thing as... It's kind of just Elliot making an assumption that the Guardians will help him because some old man suggested that, but you find out that old man's kind of an unreliable source of information at one point.
Maybe it's a commentary on the futility of life in general.
Of course, this game is so smart.
It's either smart or it's just terrible design. It's one of the two. Anyway,
Ironic.
This is my top 10 worst bosses or final bosses for any game that I played. I think I may actually die on this attempt. I only have 2 hearts left. We'll see what happens. So yeah, definitely it would be better if I don't know. There's 100 things they could have done for a final boss that would have been better than this. It's funny because this game has good bosses in it, but most of them are like optional. They could have just thrown one of the optional bosses here as the final boss, and it would have been a better experience.
Why does his hair swish around like it's a tail?
I don't know. He's flapping it. If you had hair like that and it was prehensile, wouldn't you wag it?
I mean, he's not moving his wings, so clearly that's how he's flying.
Okay, I think I made the
Why
call.
does he even
to
have
use
wings if he can just float?
I made the call to use one of my potions on this attempt, and I think that's what sealed this one.
Yeah, these phases just aren't interesting to play from looking at it. You're mostly just standing there.
So,
And you're waiting for that one janky attack so you can damage the boss.
if these phases were in a boss fight where you could actually damage him, it wouldn't be so repetitive. You wouldn't notice
it'd be
how boring this
overcaster.
is. Yeah. They wouldn't have worn out their welcome as much as they have just watching this.
You also at least feel like you're doing something, even if the boss isn't taking much damage.
Now, I did look up some speedruns after this just to see how well they do it, and they usually get it done in 2 phases. So if you get good at using the thing, you can get it done pretty fast, but obviously I'm not at that level.
Also, it just doesn't seem like it's an intuitive mechanic to have no...
Yeah, nothing else in the game has this. It is not tutorialized in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, things like this in speedruns are terrible
Oh, yeah.
because, like, it's just like, did you get a good set of RNG? Great, you did it fast. If not, you're gonna be here for literally forever, potentially.
Yeah. I hope I've well demonstrated exactly how random this seems. If it has a pattern, it apparently needs to be shortened in some way. And also, like you said, those cubes look exactly like the cubes that do hurt him. It feels like it should at least work there, too.
They're the same cube, just one's a little bigger.
So, to complain about more things about this, this game has a leveling system, which you have choices to make that are mostly meaningful for most of the game. But this boss fight completely makes it so anything that you've leveled up is completely meaningless, except for maybe like the magic mana cost reduction makes it so I don't really need to grind him for health. Oh yeah, here's the other thing: is he dies before he runs out of HP, which is a graceful thing. So anyway, that's that boss.
Yay! On to better bosses, I hope.
So the next boss is going to be from Hollow Knight. I wonder how much of this ending I included. I'm pretty sure I just... I I included this because I wanted to show that at the end of this whole thing, he pulls out the 4 elements and then uses that to zap him in a cutscene. Because that's cool, right?
Yeah, he totally used the things you gathered.
He totally used the things you collected. Let's forget ludonarrative. We'll just do it textually.
So none of them are lightning, correct?
No, none of them are lightning. But when you combine them, they become lightning.
Okay.
So I had this footage for when I was recording for the top 10, and so I thought I would put it at the beginning here. I thought it was especially appropriate because I fail in this footage, and Cauldrath doesn't fail in the footage you provided me, so...
Yeah, you think I would have provided you footage where I failed?
So anyway, this fight, what I like about it is that you get a chance to... So speaking of tutorialization and payoffs, this boss gives you a chance to get the pattern down before it throws in the extras.
Yeah, this is one of the... Like, a lot of good or well-designed boss fights will have, like, phases where they become progressively harder and they just add more mechanics onto them as you go along. And this is a good example of that.
It is a simple boss, but it is a very satisfying boss.
Yeah, by himself, he's kind of, easy to figure out once you get the pattern down. Not a big deal, but then they make it much more interesting in just a minute here. Also, as usual, it has great music. Those dang pizzas. I didn't feel too bad because you got hit by them a lot in your Pantheon fight too. Is that fight actually harder than this one?
I don't know. Yeah, obviously I had way more masks and like charms and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think you beat it in like a minute and a half. Which, by the way,
and I had the like maxed out nail.
I played it twice just to make sure we had plenty of time to talk about it. It's funny how this first phase seems a little bit slow when you're watching it.
One thing I noticed is that sometimes you get punished for trying to heal right after something you shouldn't, and then sometimes they just jump onto the wall and you're fine and you can finish healing.
Yeah. You kind of had to pay attention to the patterns there. Also, welcome, Game Misfits. I'm glad you enjoyed Phenotopia Awakening. So did you binge all of the Let's Play channel, or just the reviews? Because the Let's Play, I think, has got like... How many hours are we up to at this point? I know that we're on episode 33. This is episode 33 this time. And we do at least 90 minutes at a time.
We were doing 2.5 hours when we started, and then switched to an hour and a half.
I think that was about episode 18 that we switched to the 90 minutes. So lots of footage, lots of good discussion.
Yeah.
I think some weeks are better than others, but...
The one thing that I'd like to point out here is, so when they're on the wall and they do the projectile attack, you can't really tell whether they're going to do the high or low one. But since it's a like slower projectile attack, you can kind of like stand back and wait until you can see which one it does.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be telegraphed as much. Whereas the melee attacks, which are much faster, are way more heavily telegraphed.
I think it's to punish you if you just try to like rush them on the wall to get in more damage. Because you wouldn't know how to dodge it since it's random.
I also think that it kind of adds an interesting risk that you can take when you're trying to heal. Because if it goes favorably and you predict it correctly, then you get plenty of time to heal because there's such a slow disc. But if you mispredict it, then you just take the damage. I'm not going to say it's like completely random, like rock, paper, scissors-ish, but I learn more and more as I play Hollow Knight, like now that I'm doing my playthrough, that I don't like healing during combat, and I'd prefer just fighting as if I was playing Environmental Station Alpha.
Yeah.
Well, nice thing that it does is it gives you like choices when you're
Oh yeah.
playing. So like sometimes you'll get a. Oh, I don't think I ever had that happen to me in the Pantheon playthrough where it does. They do one up and one down.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, I guess this is me playing. So
If
I
you're-
only start this with 4 maths because I took damage in the previous round. So I don't have that much more health than you.
So if you're waiting in the middle, sure you can jump and like use a spell, but I mean that's pretty much the best opportunity to heal.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do anything else besides heal, so I think it's reasonable.
I'm trying to look for other opportunities that good spells will be working. Also, I'm glad you enjoyed the content and game misfits, and if you have any questions, definitely shoot them at us. We're talking live here, so we're definitely here to answer anything. I find that I get too distracted by healing when I have healing as an option, which is one of the reasons why I like the Joni build so much.
Yeah, like healing is always a risk, and if you don't know the right times that you can heal, then you can sometimes wind up screwing
This-
yourself over.
Disagree with calling it a risk in that way. You need to, if you're healing during a boss, you need to know when it's safe, and if it's safe, you can always heal safely. Though there are times when it's risky because the enemy could jump into a quick attack afterwards and hit you, or they could decide not to.
So I don't know if we've established that I'm not the most patient guy ever, but usually when it's safe to heal, it's also safe to attack, and I hate giving that up because I want to kill it as quickly as I can.
That's the choices I was referring to.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You have to choose between attacking and healing. Like that's a lot more common in Dark Souls that you have that choice, which I think is one of the best things that that game does.
So one of the great things about that is player expression. Is that it can appeal to a wider audience because many different types of players can express themselves the way they like during the game, rather than just being forced to do it a certain way, which I think is the reason why you don't like parrying very much, right, Cauldrath?
Yeah, because it kind of takes the choices away from you.
So this is the argument that I have a friend, not an argument, but I have a friend who really dislikes riddle puzzles because riddles have one answer, and prefers physics puzzles because you can get a lot more creative with how you approach the solution. So something like, what is it called, Infinifactory, or those games like that. The Space Chem, I think, is the same way.
Yes, Zachtronics games, my favorite.
Yeah. You have a lot of different... It's more logic-based and systems-based.
It's open-ended.
Yeah.
Open-ended solutions where there are more efficient solutions than others, but a lot of times you can still find a solution even if it's really inefficient, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
And this is in contrast to something like La Mulana, where there's one answer, and that's it. And I think that which one you would prefer is a matter of preference overall, but I think that the systems-based ones can be stronger from a marketing standpoint just because you do have that wider appeal that you get from it.
Electronic games are also replayable because you often replay levels to get more efficient solutions or, different solutions if you want. As opposed to riddles where once you know the answer, there isn't really anything else to do.
Yeah. And Hollow Knight has that going for it, I think. If you know where things are and where to get things, you can kind of go for different builds when you're doing specific fights like this one. Although this is obviously in the Pantheon, so it's at the end when you can just choose however you want to do it. And welcome, Unknown V2. And he does not like physics-based puzzles.
I kind of agree in that a lot of physics-based puzzles end up being janky or... if you're playing like a mobile game and it's about physics, or like an old Flash game, a lot of times it's just about a really precise execution of something rather than actually figuring something interesting out.
That's true.
Physics-based puzzles tend to be more activities than puzzles.
Sure. It's like, oh, I have to cut this block at this angle at this very specific time while this ball is rolling on it and hope that it goes exactly where it's supposed to and the physics don't bug out.
Yeah.
Physics puzzles can definitely go wrong. So Game Misfits asks if I'm going to cover Tales of Iron, and the answer is I don't know. Flint Son of Crimson, the developers have said it's not a Metroidvania. That doesn't mean I might not cover it if it ends up being low fit, but there's always that possibility there. And yes, physics puzzles are very easy to do wrong. I think is one of the bigger problems with them.
Not to get super sidetracked, but speaking of Dark Souls and Hollow Knight, since we're playing these footages next to each other, so in Dark Souls, healing is a lot more powerful. It feels
It's also faster.
It's better to take the healing because you heal and you pretty much heal to full using 1 or 2 Estus. Whereas with Hollow Knight, you spend a significant amount of time just healing 1 mask. So I think you have to be more patient in Hollow Knight than in Dark Souls for healing.
Well, also,
Well,
go ahead.
in Dark Souls, you also generally take way more damage, like as a percentage of your maximum health.
That's what I was actually about to say. Is that Hollow Knight? It's always you can predict how many hits you can take left, really easily. Whereas Dark Souls can also have variable damage, so there's a lot more risk involved there. Like sometimes I'll heal even when I'm only at half health, even though I know that it's not the most efficient way to do it, just because I don't know if I'm going to get slammed by, the ball of the hammer, or like what I did just there.
Poor Smoke, just getting stunlocked to death. That's why I don't like great swords.
The
in Dark
Zweihander.
Souls games. It's not fun.
The Zweihander is so great. So one of the reasons why I put this right after the Mantis Lords is because I wanted to talk about, or we were talking about before, as I was putting this footage together, about the difference between this fight and the Mantis Lords as a dual boss fight, like fighting 2 enemies at once. And obviously I went through this boss fight really fast because this build just wrecks these guys.
And you had a co-op partner.
Oh yeah.
Or at least
It's always nice to have
an NPC one.
So that's one difference between the Mantis Lords and this fight is that you can summon an aggro tank.
I actually never used any of those on my initial playthroughs in any Souls game.
Neither did I. So when I first fought Ornstein and Smo, I was a pyromancer and I used combustion after hiding around the pillars and just flaming them in the knees.
I only summon for story reasons. It sounds like a joke to excuse summoning, but I'm serious. I'll summon for a certain final boss in this game because I think it's appropriate.
But you have to summon Solaire for other parts of the game in order to get that far. I'm pretty sure.
Do you?
I don't know if you do or not. Maybe you just have to talk to him in those locations for him to appear there.
I think you just have to talk to him.
Maybe.
At least I summoned him in one playthrough. And then I summoned Tarkus before as a tribute to everything he has done for us.
Yeah, the Zweihander just wrecks this boss and just completely.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting comparing symmetric bosses versus asymmetric bosses. In Ornstein and Smog are clearly an asymmetric boss. Each of them have half of the move set, whereas with the Mantis Lords, sure they do combine their attacks in very specific ways, so you can consider them their own attacks, but they are the same boss. You're fighting 2 of them essentially.
Yeah.
And you know what they're gonna do pretty much.
So this is another boss that's asymmetrical dual boss fight. I'm going to move the chat up here because this footage is actually from a previous stream, so I apologize about the confusion here. But this is another boss that eventually it becomes an asymmetric boss. Also, I'm just playing music on this one because I didn't want the other stream voices coming in and messing us up, so this is really just footage here. So Cauldrath, you love this boss, right? This is the best boss in the game.
Actually, this is probably like the second best boss in the game.
I like this boss. This is the boss that really messed me up the first time I played.
Wait, no, the third best. I think the melty like face lady is the best one. Then the second phase of the final boss is the next best. This is probably the third best.
You know, the second phase of the final boss is kind of forgettable to me. I don't remember that one very well. Like, I remember this guy, and I said it was his sister, but I guess the angel that he summons is his sister. The other lady who doesn't like you. That apparently is going to be the main character of the next game.
Interesting.
As from what I've heard.
Are there any characters that like you in this game?
The toe guy likes you, and then he dies. And then the tree guy, he likes you, and then he dies. Seeing a pattern there.
Not to get too off topic, but I've been meaning to play Blasphemous. Every time I think, I'm gonna actually play Blasphemous, they announce an update, so I have to wait for the update to come out. This is like the third time.
I
Got
just
another update, February?
I just redid my review earlier this year, and they've added 2 more updates. I'm like, you guys were supposed to be done.
Hey, they said this next one's the last one for real this time. And if they have a sequel, then I trust they'll work on that instead of this game.
You don't know that. Maybe they'll like add DLC where you can play as Kristana.
As the worm from Team 17.
I'm sure Future Suture is furious at this game.
Yeah, because he actually played it. To be fair, the update, the add the Amasitas or whatever, was very needed, I think. Just adding the teleporters to each of the save points helps this game a lot. It is a little weird that it's like tied to kind of a weird execution, though. You have to donate to the church to get it. So this is the part where it becomes an asymmetrical dual boss fight, and I died right when...
Oh, so we don't get to see it.
It gets there eventually. The successful attempt is on here. I figured it was good to include unsuccessful attempts during these. It's better than repeating the boss fight over and over again, I think. Or the same fight.
I'd agree.
So this is me redoing my charms.
I get the lightning resist.
Yeah, the charms didn't do enough in this game to be really interesting, I think. Like, in the same way that Hollow Knight was. Like, I was watching you fight those Mantis Lords. It was obvious that you used the steady body thing.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's really useful for being able to get more hits in.
Yeah, and there's nothing like that in this game. Usually it's just like minor stat upgrades.
Right.
Although I was testing the dodge move there, and that one's actually pretty substantial.
I feel like that's just a general problem with this game, is that none of the upgrades are very significant. Like, it doesn't feel like it's much different at the end of the game from the beginning of the game.
Yeah. I mean, if you can make your game consistently good with that feature, like, Environmental Station Alpha doesn't really change that much after you get the dash. Like, maybe the up dash might become relevant in some bosses, but not really.
I kind of disagree. I mean, okay, the big thing with that game is that you don't really get significantly more health. Things can still damage you a lot. But I've been watching someone play through it recently. Them talking about just how fun some of the endgame upgrades are. And how they just change how you go through the map.
Yeah, I agree. Esdras Game Misfits was... I think it took me like 18 minutes the first time I fought this guy. Sometimes I time myself when I'm doing bosses. Which is funny because on stream it took me 40 minutes to kill the melty face girl. I don't know what was going on with me that day. I actually made a joke intro for the Blasphemous playthrough to make fun of myself on that one. That was not my proudest moment streaming games. I was proud of
Calling
myself.
her,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, calling her melty face girl sounds insensitive.
You know what's really insensitive? The fact that I kept calling her a guy most of the time.
Why you said girl that time, just to emphasize that, so you could correct your mistake.
No, I think it's because you called her melty face girl. Anyway, I like this boss a lot. It was the one that really kind of... This was actually kind of where the game starts for me. At least, in the original patch. The first 3 bosses are just kind of... They're very easy. With the exception of Melty Face Girl. And this is kind of where the game just kind of gets real. And I feel like this is one of the bosses that uses the game's mechanics well.
Actually, I was about to say the opposite, where you can't parry most of his attacks, and they linger so long that you can't use the iframes.
That's going based off the assumption that the parry is a core mechanic of this game that is necessary. And you may not be wrong on that. I mean, it is in the game, but you can parry a lot of his attacks, and you can parry to prevent the damage at the very least.
Can you parry
It is
the
possible to
lightning
choose not to
spin?
parry.
What's that?
Can you parry the lightning spin? I always assumed that you couldn't.
I think you can prevent the damage. But I don't, because I'm very bad at parrying. In fact, I didn't really get good at parrying until the Amasita fights. And I'm pronouncing that completely wrong, and I apologize. I don't even know how it's spelled. The DLC bosses.
How did the whole parrying thing go with you for Grime?
I think that Grime did a really good job tutorializing it, to be honest. The problem with Grime is that it just kind of gave up on the parry mechanic by about the halfway point of the game.
Yeah.
It's just a really weird... I don't know. It's like they gave up on it, or they just felt like they couldn't do more with it or something. I don't know. I feel like that game had really troubled development. Most games have troubled development. I don't think there's such a thing as a game that doesn't have troubled development.
So I felt like what they did was similar to Bayonetta had a hard mode where they take away witch time, which is one of the core mechanics of the game. But they did it to make the game harder, and I think Grime was trying to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, except that it's not optional.
Yeah.
So this lady only shows up in his last 2 health bars.
Yeah, she actually has her own health bar, so you can hit her enough times that she leaves.
Yeah.
It
I remember
seems
actually
kind of
trying to kill her first, just in case it unlocked something.
To me, it seems kind of annoying to introduce a change up to the boss so late in the fight.
Do you
It
think
feels like you have to work for a significant amount of time just to get to the end of the boss, and then there's a bunch of new moves.
Yeah, that can
Maybe there
kind of
are
be
a lot of
annoying,
moves.
depending on the boss fight.
That's the problem with the boss phase things. If you can master the first part, and then the last part is a huge difficulty spike, then you wind up basically having to grind through the beginning of it. So if you're going to design a fight with phases, then you need to make sure that you can quickly get through the first phases, or you have a smoother difficulty curve between the phases.
I think the best way is to make sure that the phases tutorialize the later phases well, so it's not like it's catching you off guard. That way it feels like the first phases are still practice for the later phases.
Well, in this case, you're still dealing with him, and he has all the same moves. It's just adding her in.
Yeah. So you're saying this is a bad third phase?
I think in this case, it's a problem of the first 2 phases take too long, and there's no way to really speed them up, and there's a difficulty spike on the 3rd phase.
It does seem like you can only do so much damage once. I'm not clear on the attacks you're using that are doing more damage than others. Because sometimes you hit the boss and nothing happens. And then sometimes you chunk them.
So when you do this combo, it does a lot more damage, and it
Okay.
hit stuns them, so you can do the full combo.
Yeah, you kind of have to hit them all 4 times.
But even if you do that, it still doesn't do that much damage, to
So-
where like you can quickly clear through the phases.
So this game has charge attacks like Hollow Knight, but I think you have to hold still while you're charging your sword, which makes it very circumstantial.
Also, in that case, like it didn't do the hit stun, so it does feel a little random whether or not it does it.
I think the second time I fought this guy in New Game Plus, besides having charms that I wouldn't normally have, because you start with the base health when you do New Game Plus in this game, so you still have to basically fight this guy at a decent power level or a normal power level. And when I fought this guy on New Game Plus, I was employing some tactics that I think worked out a lot better. Like, I think I actually used the charge attack when he does his little lightning dash, because he always lands right before he hits you, so you get a perfect opportunity to do that in there. It's too bad I didn't include that footage. Didn't think about it. But hey,
So how far in is this boss?
what's that?
How far in is this boss?
This is the 4th boss. Out of how many bosses would you say Blasphemous has, Cauldrath? Maybe 10? 15?
There's a lot of optional bosses, though.
Let me think. There's not a lot of optional bosses in the base game. There's a lot in the DLC. Who's optional? So you have the first 3 bosses that unlock the Turian Gate, which is the official term for that now. And then once you get past that, you have the Handsy boss, Jazz Hands. And then you have the Snake Baby, which is a joke. And then you had the Fire boss, which is actually really good, I think. I like that boss.
I'm gonna ignore your words because of spoiler.
Yeah, I'm just listening to try and see if I can remember them all. So that's three more after this midpoint. And then you have Lady Who Hates You. So that makes it 9 bosses? 10 bosses?
Yeah, and then there's the final boss right after her.
Yeah. So not that many in the base game.
So what do you think will happen first? Will this game stop getting updates, or will Silksong come out?
I think this game will stop getting updates before Silksong comes out. I also think that Star Citizen will come out before Silksong.
Oh, jeez.
To be fair, it has been in development a lot longer.
So, do you mean like comes out of beta, or like has like it's fully featured?
Fully featured now with oh gosh, that game, man. I have friends who like have donated like $4,000 to that game. I'm like, why?
You got to get the good ships.
You gotta
Still just selling all these ships before the game comes out.
Are they still selling ships? I actually haven't seen a lot of news on that recently, so I thought it finally died off.
I assume that they just have a page where you can constantly buy ships.
They can't run out of money if they keep making more promises. They have to pay for it.
I guess. I don't know. I haven't really heard anything about it. It used to be like this huge controversy, although I haven't been like reading PC Magazine or anything like that recently. So, for all I know, it's the same thing they've been talking about. But maybe I think all of the game journalists are just bored of it at this point.
Yeah,
it had a
it was like
Kickstarter in 2012.
I remember like buying like doing one of the ship things when I was in college, which was like 2008, 9.
So I'm gonna say that the addition of his sister here is mostly innocuous. She just doesn't do that much, and as long as you keep your distance from her, she's kind of like It's kind of like he got a hold of one of the familiars from Symphony of the Night. Like, it just kind of attacks when she feels like it. And there he goes.
And from off screen, apparently.
Yeah, I guess we were complaining before about it being a difficulty spike, though. And
And it's more like a difficulty bump.
yeah.
It's a very blunt spike. Someone needs to sharpen that thing. Alright, we can move this back down over here.
The thing is, you kept dying every time, like, right when she shows up.
Yeah, but this is a successful attempt. It didn't really have a thing. It should be fading out soon here. Okay, so here's one of Master's favorite games.
Uh-huh.
Well, this is the second one, which he doesn't really know anything about, though.
Yeah, you get
That's
to watch
true.
you get to watch combat Nori now.
Oh, boy.
So I think that this is one of the better bosses
I'd agree on that.
out of all 5 bosses that are in this game. You want to talk about not very many bosses.
I got distracted looking at the Star Citizen Kickstarter. Estimated delivery November 2014.
Oh,
Not actually. Okay, so there's a ton of different tiers. I'm not actually sure if they're saying that they think the game will be out or if they're just promising extra rewards by that date. It's hard to tell.
oh, this is where the head stomp from my intro comes from. So this is my first attempt. It actually took me a lot fewer attempts than I thought. And that's because the mechanics in this game make it really easy to... yeah, there it is. That's the intro. Now we all know where it comes from. And I think it came from my first attempt that I did the head stomp. The reason why is because it turns out that doesn't do that much damage. So I'm playing this on hard mode, so you can see that it's not doing that much damage no matter what I do to him. But the mechanics in Ori... so all of those little blue dots on the left are your magic. And every time you do your Hollow Knight heal ability, it heals you 3 green dots on the right. So doing the math, how much health do I have right now?
Well, you didn't say how much mana each one uses.
So it just uses 1. So it's 1 for 3.
Yeah, so you have a ton of health.
I have a ton of health. So even though this is my first attempt, I do a pretty good job surviving, but it's also really easy to survive this game.
Yeah.
So I think we just proved that this has contact damage, which is something else that we were complaining about. That you have these giant bosses that are meant to be, have their chase scenes, which we'll see at some point here.
Yeah, the other thing is it's pretty vague, like, where the hitboxes are, which can be a problem with 3D games.
Yeah.
Still don't like just how annoyingly flashy all the effects are. Like when you're hitting the boss, it just obscures where you are.
It looks really cool in the screenshot.
That's what they were going for, I imagine.
It's cool to put in your intro for the Metroidvania review because it looks nice.
It is also a pretty spider.
A pretty spider, I don't know, are those hairs or those tendrils? I don't remember.
Like tentacle.
That actually did a pretty good amount of damage. Now that I'm watching the footage on this, I'm like, was my strategy really bad? Like, that hammer stomp just isn't doing that much. So this is when the boss gets more interesting. They make the arena bigger, and then you can use bash on that
Nice.
thing. Which, by the way, bash is back in the sequel because, of course.
Yeah, it was kind of the, like, defining feature.
Do we know what their budget was?
No, I don't. I mean, I think we could probably look it up. I'm sure somebody's made an estimate for it.
I wouldn't be surprised if this game had the most budget of any Metroidvania.
You think so? I'd say the Metroid Dread probably gonna beat that. Maybe.
Maybe.
Nintendo's sometimes really frugal. I'll call it that. That's a nice way of putting it.
It could still just be like 2 guys doing it in a basement. I mean, we don't know.
So the guy who made AM2R actually worked on this game as a level designer. And it has good level design, so good for him. So on the subject of Nintendo being frugal, we were talking about AAA games and the expectations that you, like when you pay $60 for a game, what the graphics should be like and what the sound should be like, and etc. And my friend was complaining about the backgrounds in the new Fire Emblem that apparently is really drab. Like the characters are really well done, but everything in the background is just terrible, and the directing is like shot reverse shot and done as cheaply as possible while still looking pretty decent for screenshots.
Or all the people complaining about the new Pokemon games.
Oh yeah. That was the other thing he complained about, was the Pokemon game didn't look as good as he wanted it to. It was my commentary that I didn't think Bravely Default looked like a $60 game. Bravely Default 2. But game prices are going up. They've been too low for a long time, so I could just be wrong. So yeah, I appreciate hard mode in this game when it comes to all of the platforming and the things that I like about this game. It makes the combat, like these bosses, just last way too long. Now, remind you that this is the first attempt. And
you had multiple attempts?
Yeah, I actually had fewer than I thought, but you see how long this takes. It's just a long time.
Just looks incredibly tedious.
This is why I don't really trust hard modes, is because a lot of times they just like adjust the stats upwards.
Yeah.
Like health, and then like this boss has too much health.
Like the regular monsters are pretty well done, but whoever was in charge of balancing the bosses just did not do a good job on the difficult modes. And if you guys are listening, Moon Studios... Oh, there we go. That's where I messed up and failed.
Moon Studios, according to this this interview, had 80 people working on the game. Or at least 80 people working like in the studio while this game was being developed.
Well,
not that it matters. I'm also not trying to hate on this game more than usual.
Because you haven't tried it, or...
I haven't tried this one. But I mean,
well,
I can hate on Ori any day.
Sam, the boss balancer, needed to try again there. So you get him about to half point, and then he does a chase scene.
Yeah, they did it, like, even during the bosses, this game has pretty aggressive checkpointing.
Yeah, like I died right there because there's an instant death spot there.
Yeah, it's like surprise instant death.
Yeah, well, luckily there's a checkpoint right there, so... So yeah, all of the bosses have one of these chase scenes, and they're big so that they can have these big chase scenes, but they just don't make the best bosses for Hollow Knight style combat for the regular boss fights. Now the chase scene on this one is really short.
Yeah, like the first game was basically all chase scenes as like replacements for bosses.
Yeah, if anybody doesn't know.
Chase scenes are cinematic, don't you know?
So I'm
People
noticing
love
that
chase scenes.
Well, it kind of meets the same like criteria as a boss. Like bosses are supposed to be like the culmination of everything you've learned, and the Ori chase scenes were supposed to be like a culmination of everything you were supposed to have learned in the dungeon.
I agree. I'm not hating on chase scenes or anything.
So this is my successful attempt after I stopped trying to use the hammer. So I've talked to other people who played this game, and apparently some of the magic-based weapons actually do some damage on hard mode, and that was probably my biggest problem. So if I played this again, I'd probably try some different strategies, but...
Yeah, I think I used the bow a bunch, because there were a lot of bosses that you just could not reach with your melee weapons.
Oh yeah, there's one boss that you can't... There's no place that you can heal, so you have to either use the bow or not use your magic, and... I mean, why not use your magic?
Yeah.
So... Ori 2 has great combat. I just feel like the content design could use a little work, specifically
Yeah.
on the bosses. That's my unpopular opinion, probably. The one I put in my review.
I believe both Ori games have overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam.
Yeah, I like them. I gave this game a 4.5 out of 5, so...
Like, I would consider this to be one of the best, like, at least Metroidvania adjacent games.
Because you don't want to call it a Metroidvania.
Right? It's a Zelda-like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You know, it's one of those things. You know that Super Metroid has dungeons, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
wow.
has some dungeons, but
It has
it also has... It's mostly not dungeons.
It has at least 4 dungeons. Possibly 5.
What is a dungeon?
Possibly 5 dungeons. A place that you go to and you never come back to.
Yeah.
So, Fantoon's little spaceship.
Oh, I was hoping you'd like the Symphony of the Night, but
What was this?
Oh, a miserable pile of secrets.
Oh. You didn't say it right. You're supposed to say, "What is a dungeon?"
sorry, I'm not good at saying things.
Just start throwing glasses at him.
So yeah, part of this is not being very good at it, and part of it is that your melee attacks just don't do enough damage to these guys. Okay, I did die during this boss fight. It is nice that there's checkpoints in the middle of it. If you had to start over from the beginning, that would have been really tedious.
Yeah. I'm almost surprised that they didn't make that one of the hard mode things.
Honestly, if they just left the damage the same and made that be the hard mode dip change, that would have been better.
Yeah.
I would have accepted that because honestly, I prefer the rest of the game on hard mode. Just because I think the platforming is great and we're very well done, and adding that extra challenge there, I think, is a good thing. What the heck? I don't know what killed me there. Something killed me there. I'm sure that's why I paused there. Like, what killed me?
Yeah, it's something that should never happen. It's the question, what killed me?
What killed me? I think I'm supposed to stop the darkness. Oh, that's right. So, no, that was tutorialized in the area before this. You had the whole darkness mechanic.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wasn't catching on that that's what I needed to do. Yeah, I think I figured out that the sword was the better weapon to use against the boss as far as DPS was concerned. I think Ori's biggest problem for combat isn't that... I mean, obviously this boss is taking forever. It's not just that, though, but the fact that it only has 5 bosses makes it feel like the combat doesn't really hit its stride where it should. Like, you have all of these different abilities, but you never really... You don't have enough opportunity to use them outside of those gauntlets that are, just repeated enemies that you fought for the entire game.
I don't think a game needs a large amount of bosses. Yeah, I guess I'd rather have a smaller amount of good bosses than just a bunch of kind of bad ones.
I agree with you, but this game definitely needs more bosses.
Okay.
At least I think so. Like, I think if they release an Ori 2 Definitive Edition with, a new area with 2 new bosses, then it could be a 5 out of 5 game, in my opinion.
Wow.
And then they need to fix these bosses so they don't take so freaking long on hard mode. Or at the very least, I need to get good, which is probably the closer thing. Or the bigger issue here is I need to actually use the different spells you have. Part of the problem with all those spells is that the bow is the only one that's required.
So do you just not have the spells at this point in the game?
It may be that I just don't have the spell that you need for this boss to make it not be tedious. Which I don't know. I think that your boss just shouldn't be tedious regardless of what build you have, but that's kind of hard to do, I think.
Yeah, like the way you get spells is there's a vendor that has like all the spells and all the weapons, and you have to pick one at each given point. So if you choose a spell, then you're like, oh, I'm not getting this melee weapon instead. And there's actually some areas that you can't get to if you don't have like the hammer.
Is this a crest like?
No, it's a Zelda-like.
Okay.
So I think there's a good argument that the first game is a Zelda-like. So this is what I forgot to do: is I needed to cast the flash spell to keep myself from dying on this part.
Why does the darkness hurt you?
It just does, and it happens in the entire dungeon leading up to this boss. So it's not inappropriate for him to do that. I just wasn't catching on that that's what was happening until after I died a couple of times.
You'd think that'd be his opening move.
It's making it dark? Yeah, you think so. Well, it's kind of like Dr. Wily and Mega Man not putting spikes all over his castle. I mean, he has a flying saucer, why not? Like, it's not like he has to worry about it.
How expensive that thing is to run.
That's true. Do you know how much gas this uses? It uses a 20-gallon tank in 20 minutes. That's a gallon a minute, guys.
Yeah, maybe it costs a lot of magic power to like do the darkness thing.
Maybe that's what it is.
So, how long can you hold down the bash button?
It does have a limit. I
It
want to
just
say
seems really long.
4 seconds?
Yeah, at some point it just like automatically shoots whatever direction you're aiming.
Okay.
I have-
Freezing time for 4 seconds seems pretty powerful.
That is the big gimmick of the game. The double jump in this game is especially low.
Wasn't it low in the first story too?
I think it was a little higher than this game. Like, this game has a lot of horizontal movement to it, and you use bash to get your vertical distance.
Yeah.
Spider got tired.
And then I cut it for spoiler reasons.
So, it's like you'd think the spider would have some sort of web that inhibits you. That really doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, that seems like a
it does like
typical
a
thing for a
whip
spider
beam.
to have.
Like that's the whole point of a spider.
Okay, guys,
What's the spider doing?
This is Drillia Willis.
Oh,
And
so excited.
note that I'm showing that I am loading up from the title screen because I quit and I came back because I either had to sleep or something. And the reason why I'm showing you that I am loading from the title screen is because I wanted to show that you cannot leave the boss fight after you've been in it or after you've gotten to it.
And it auto saves it.
It auto saves it, so you're stuck here. And you either have to figure out how to fight this boss or fail, and good luck if you haven't collected all of the HP upgrades or all the other stuff you might need.
How much of a difference do those upgrades make?
Well, in this fight, as we'll find out, not that much. But with that said, extra health is going to help you, like, no matter who the boss fight is. Basically what I'm saying is, don't make it so you can't exit a final boss fight, like, ever, in a Metroidvania game. So anyway, I apologize if anybody has epilepsy. Epilepsy warning. It's probably too late to say that at this point.
Should have opened with
Pretty
that.
dead.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about it until that happened.
Did it mention that in the screen, in the loading screen though? Saw something about it.
I think it did.
Something
so
about great effect.
maybe it had that if people were actually paying attention to that.
Yeah, so we're not liable.
Now that you've already bought this game, by the way, epilepsy.
Yeah. So on this boss fight, you also can't die, so it's kind of like an endless hell until you figure it out. I actually
Refill
thought
the boss's health whenever you run out of health.
yes, the boss's health also refills, so the ultimate song doesn't really help you in the situation. And I apologize for the Google Hangouts bings in the background. People are probably texting me while I was playing this. But I turned the music off anyway because this is very loud. And so we get to hear Kevin MacLeod music now.
Is there a method to this boss that we're not seeing?
So I literally thought this boss was impossible, like as I was fighting it. So your regular attacks that you've been using for the entire game don't work. The only thing that hurts him are these giant notes that I'm shooting out. So you have to use your groove power. As you can see, every time I fire that note, it deals a little bit of, or it takes a little bit of my groove. So you have to be close to the sides in order to refill. And see how much damage I'm doing? I'm pretty sure that there's power-ups that raise that damage, but obviously I can't lead the boss fight now.
This is almost as tedious as the Ori 2 boss.
Yeah, except that like this one's way harder to predict. And you can't heal yourself like the Ori 2 boss.
You could just start the game completely over and go get all the power-ups.
I could. It took me like 5 hours to get up to this point, so I really didn't want to do that.
What is the story behind the character Drilly Willis?
So Flash Clappy is a narcissist and doesn't like Drilly Willis because Drilly Willis is successful at life. And so he traps you inside this dream world place, and the whole game is you trying to get out of it. And so you're fighting Flash Clappy to finish him off. So yeah, you can't heal. And this boss's pattern seems to be completely random. The guitars just kind of go off in whichever direction the game feels like putting them.
So none of the other...
he shoots them off screen so you can't see where they're going.
Yeah, from off screen too, yeah. And,
Did you have other attacks besides the red one?
Nope. There might be another attack that does damage, but this is the most effective one. So anyway, I eventually figured it out. So you do have, what is that, 7 songs down there? I think it's 7 songs. And one of the songs is a song that makes it a lot easier. It doesn't make the boss fight better, though.
So why is this terrible boss? Let's discuss.
How did it come to existence, you mean?
No, I mean, what mechanics just make it terrible?
So I'm going to start with the randomness. I think it's important that the bosses telegraph. Oh yeah, so I did that little drill beam thing that I just done that I think does damage. So I'm going to start with the randomness. Like, regardless of however you design your boss, you need to have some kind of... I don't know. I mean, it doesn't always have to be predictable. What do you think, Cauldrath? You were disagreeing with me on this the other day because you were saying that Nightmare King Grim was too predictable.
Yeah, like, some randomness is good, but you need to have... Like, you need to be able to react to the randomness.
Telegraphing.
This seems like a case where there's, like, randomness that, like when it shoots stuff up off the top of the screen, you can't see where it's going, so you can't react to it. And then also, it randomly moves around in some ways that are impossible to dodge. Like when you're in the corner of the screen and it just moves right on top of you. Like, you can't jump to get over top of them, it looks like. So you're just going to take damage because the game decided you're going to take damage.
Yeah. And you can't heal in this fight, so there's no way to get around that.
Right.
I think that forcing you to use this terrible note attack is another aspect of this fight that makes it really not very good.
Did you ever have to use this note attack before?
Oh yeah, it's useful because it does a lot of damage to normal enemies, but you know. So you'll see, I have the full fight, including the second phase. And the second phase, you're allowed to use your normal attacks again. You'll see me using my normal attacks, and if you could use the screw attack on this fight, then it would be a lot different, I think. Here's the other thing, though, is this is really just not doing enough damage, especially for how random this boss is. I got him down to half health there, which I think was a kind of a proud moment that I was able to pull that off.
So the other thing is, it looks like it moves faster than you while moving randomly, which is another thing that like means that you just can't react to it because it can just like chase you down and you can't get away from it.
Other aspects, the aesthetics of this boss fight. Like whenever you use that big note ability, it makes this sound on an already kind of loud background. So here's me. Here's me desperately trying the other songs right now.
Is the entire game just this hard to look at?
Yes, this game has that art style. So finally, I figured out if you played the mellow song, he stops. So the mellow song slows enemies down. That's like its function. What I did not know until I was desperately trying different songs during this fight was that it stacks with itself. So if you play it enough, then he literally freezes.
Seems useful.
And that is how you beat this boss. I don't know if that was the intended way to beat him. So let's talk about this. Does this make this boss better, knowing that you can turn off his movement?
This kind of makes it worse.
How does it make it worse?
It makes it beatable, at least.
At least it's possible.
A terrible, beatable boss worse than a, like a completely stationary beatable boss. Is that worse than a randomly moving unbeatable boss? So
that's a good question.
It does technically make it better because it's beatable.
I think that's a good point. And yet I still died here. Of course, it was the first time I figured that out. So, yeah, it's still technically, I can still get hit by those guitars if I'm not being careful. Also, he spawned right on top of me just here. Also, there's no fast way to get through your songs, so you're going to have to cycle through them every time. You have to be careful when you cast the spells so that he's in a position where you can actually deal damage to him. So I don't like reviewing games until after I've beaten them, and I really thought that I was going to have to not review this game until I
feel like if you get to the final boss and determine that
it's literally impossible.
Yeah.
I think if I did determine it was actually impossible, I probably would have settled on that. I'm glad I didn't because I don't like making that decision, but anyway, so the spider boss doesn't seem very tedious now, does it? So when people ask me why I score games so highly, that's because I know where the bottom is, guys. I'm not saying that Drilly Willis is at the bottom. I think I gave it a 2.5? 2? I think I gave it a 2. And I think it was partially because of bosses like this. The actual game is competent. The Metroidvania exploration is as fun as it ever can, or as fun as an average Metroidvania can be. But the bosses are just really crummy. Wednesday streams are weird, says now 9,000. You came at the tail end when we're talking about some of the worst boss fights. So if I did a top 10 worst boss fights, end boss fights, this would be on it. Possibly top 10 worst boss fights, period. I don't know. If I did worst boss fights, period, I probably should put bosses that are actually impossible on there. Not that I've encountered any yet.
So the Kickstarter demo for Eterna Noctis, that boss had random patterns that some of them were unavoidable, and they did like tons of damage. Like it's kind of like a Souls-like with the like design they went for.
Right.
So like every time you get hit, it's like a third of your health, and some of the attacks are just completely unavoidable because of the way they line up. So I after like 4 hours of trying to beat that boss, I like decided it was impossible.
Well, I heard that with the more recent like reveals for that game that people have much higher hopes on it. People that were very down on it before.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the reason you were down on it. Like, if somebody designs a boss so that it's not possible to beat, then I feel like their priorities aren't in the right spot.
That's true, yeah. All right,
I think
Oh, go ahead.
invincible bosses can be good. But go on first.
So this is the second phase. So see the screw attack that I'm doing right now that shoots? That's what I could have been doing, but that boss was immune to those attacks. And I think that the screw attack actually does not work on this boss. I think you have to use the drill on this boss. And I think, thankfully, you have a... I'm distracted by the flashiness. I've
Checkpoint?
yeah, checkpoint. Checkpoint's the word I'm looking for.
That's nice.
Thank gosh. So, like I said, if I was to like try and name a worst boss, I don't know if this would be on it because at least it has a checkpoint. Like when you're rating what the worst is, you have a lot of at leasts on there.
Okay, so invincible bosses, can they work? If so, when?
I think Undertale does it fine. As much as I think that was one of the best things about Undertale was it was mostly about the dodge phases.
I don't mean phases where you can't hurt them. I mean just an invincible boss you cannot kill.
Oh, you mean
Conventionally.
Well, it also depends on whether you can progress without killing it.
obviously,
if you
yeah.
If you can't progress without killing it, then it's very bad for it to be a...
What about Dark Souls 1? The first, that boss.
Couldn't you technically kill that boss?
Yeah, you could. You could nick it down like crazy. Hunting bosses is what Down 9000 is bringing up. So like Nemesis could be
Pretty
an
sure
invincible boss.
Nemesis you could,
Nemesis
like, at least
you
in the original
can.
3, you couldn't permanently kill them, but you like knock them out, and then like for that specific instance of Nemesis showing up,
Right.
they would effectively be dead.
The point I was trying to make is that it was it's that type of concept that could be invincible if you wanted to design it that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can kill Seath in the first encounter. He instantly heals.
No, you can't kill Sif. So yeah, that's a scripted event. So this second phase isn't great either because you see those guitars coming down and there's not really, you don't have a dodge move or anything like that. So
Yeah, you need to make sure. Yeah, like you need to be able to react to it. So you need to be able to move fast enough to avoid the projectiles.
So technically this does have a telegraph because it does kind of arc upwards a little bit, but you don't really have a lot of prediction on where it's going to land. And because you kind of have to hold still and drill.
It has some weird physics to it.
Yeah.
Where it'll, like, change speeds.
It does look strange.
Now,
So would you prefer to be able to technically kill a boss even though it's very hard to do when you're meant to die on the boss, or would you rather it just be impossible to beat them?
So if you're going to have a scripted boss, then you should just make the whole thing scripted. So like for instance, all right, so you're supposed to die on the first boss of Demon Souls and Sekiro and oh gosh, did they do that again? Yeah, Demon Souls and Sekiro I think are the two main ones.
Bloodborne had something where there was like some minor enemy, but you didn't have like weapons yet at that point.
Yeah, you don't have weapons. You have to get to the first checkpoint without dying if you wanted to, or you just go straight to the checkpoint if you do that. Then there's this boss fight.
Oh yeah, this is obviously the best one because this is from Practice Metroidvania, the thing that I made.
So is that like his vision, or is it like a laser?
It's like a aiming laser. It's basically just an indicator to let you know where it's going to shoot. Because as you can see, it can get the room can get pretty big, so they'll be shooting projectiles from off screen. So one of the things that I have as a pet peeve is
Not being
things
able to
that
see
shoot. Yeah, bosses shooting you from off screen.
What's the lore of this boss?
There isn't really any unless you want to know why I designed the boss the way I did. So the previous the game has 2 bosses in it right now. And I'm probably not going to make any more because this was just a practice thing. And the first one is one of the slowly creeping wall things. So it's like a claustrophobic boss. So I wanted to make a boss where it's kind of the opposite feeling, where the room is too open and the boss can run away from you easily. So then you it has these switches that you hit to make the room smaller so it can't run away from you as easily.
Interesting. So I wanted to respond to Game Misfits just so it doesn't seem like I'm ignoring him. Hunter's Legacy, I don't know if I know that game. But I haven't played that one yet. But yeah, it's always the worst when you get to the end of a game and the final boss is just not good. So Nick says that his favorite thing about this boss fight is that it has buzzsaws, because that's what makes it a Metroidvania. I do
Some of the White Palace buzzsaw budget got used on this boss.
I'm sure they had over surplus buzzsaws.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of the shrinking room, though. I think that's a unique idea that hasn't been done in anything I've seen. I actually did not notice that was what was going on until you pointed it out, though.
Yeah, so it might have some conveyance issues. I haven't actually gotten a chance to watch anybody else do this boss fight, so I don't know how well it works if you don't know, if you don't come into it knowing how everything works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is just gray boxed out or whatever the term is, so it's not like it needs to be super.
Well, it should
readable.
it should still have readability.
Well, sure, but you could make it way more readable just by changing the graphics.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is just add some kind of effect where it goes, and then makes it really apparent that the room is shrinking and that's what's happening.
Yeah, I like the idea.
I was lazy with the room shrinking, and all I did was scaled the room by a percentage every time you hit the switch.
So is the ceiling?
So you can actually look and see the switches get thinner because they're being scaled with the rest of the room.
So you have your little mini map that shows that there's a thing off in the corner.
It's like a camera, it's just zoomed in on the switch so you know where it is.
It's nice.
So having all that explained to me makes me appreciate this a little bit more. Because when I was watching it before, I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
But see, if I have to explain it, that means that there's a problem.
Well, graphics are important. But we understand that this is a prototype.
Yeah.
I do like the main character. You should definitely keep him exactly the way he is.
I agree.
Yeah, this is where the avatar that I used to have came from. It's the dash. But I switched it up to the sprite that I'm got for the game that I'm not working on ever.
So I noticed that you have a little shield thing pop up. Is that you pulling off a parry, or is that you taking damage?
That's me taking damage. That's the yeah, that's just indicator of that. A lot of the stuff in here is like themed similar to Mega Man X games. So like when you take damage in those, that you have like a little bit of a knockback, and then you have like a little spark effect coming off of you.
So I'm actually so in the video I'm making soon, I talk about theming and just the theming and or just what the concept of theming is and that type of stuff, just to kind of get the jargon out of the way before I use a lot during the actual meat of the analysis. And I have a section or a couple of sentences about making an action game with just boxes shooting at each other. I'm actually tempted to ask you permission to use this footage.
Yeah, and you can actually like this game is open source, and
I guess I can record the footage myself, huh? Instead of using your
like it's free and open source. So if you want to just go download it and do whatever, and
I might do that.
You could add like real sprites to it. That'd be great.
So I have one line. No, I wouldn't do that. That's a lot of work. No, I have
Just
one
make
line
it 3% greener.
I have one line in the video where I say you can make a perfectly fine game without using any theming at all. But I might put this game as the footage.
Perfect. I would be honored.
You'll have to link that to me. We'll put the link in the description of the YouTube videos after you remind me after I posted the video. Oh gosh, I need to make sure I get the video.
I'm gonna expect some speed runs of this game. There's not really an ending. It's just like there's an area where you would have the final area if I actually implemented it. So if you get to the like center top area, then you effectively beat the game.
So this is the overtime footage for the week. This is Insect Adventure. This is telling us that we're past our normal stream time.
It is. I do have one more thought I want to get in though before we close out. So, what if we got a neural net to define a Metroidvania? What would it say?
What would it say?
It would depend on what the inputs you fed it were.
I was about to say, we should do that. We should have an AI. Don't they have AIs that like scan common words in subreddits and then like create a story or or a paragraph based off of that?
I don't know about subreddits specifically. I haven't seen that, but yeah, there's plenty of stuff that you can do in that vein. So I think it would be fun to try it.
So you could make a like neural net that you fed it like a list of like a bunch of games, and said this is a Metroidvania, this is not a Metroidvania, and then from that it could like it would make its own definition, and then try to like you'd feed it another game and it would try to determine if that was a Metroidvania or not.
We should claim that the computer is going to decide what the definitive definition of Metroidvania is, since none of us actually want to commit. And
see, that's exactly what I was thinking.
My definition of a Metroidvania is obviously the correct one.
Obviously.
It's just I can't get anyone else to agree to it.
Check out this Chozo statue.
It's not a Chozo.
That's not a Chozo. I just got the game.
It looks like it was like an arrow pointing at its crotch.
It was the speed booster. Come on.
So it's a speed booster pointing at its crotch.
I like the run up a walls ability in this game. This game has a lot of really creative abilities. Like I don't know if you can tell from the footage that the game is a little bit jank, but it's got great exploration in spite of the jank. I think they did a very good job with that. So yeah, I think that would be fun, Master. I'll talk to my brother who actually knows about a lot of these neural nets and see if he can find one. That might be fun to do.
Alright.
Any
I
other
made a contribution?
Any other final thoughts before we stop for the night?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
So anyway, this is the Insect Adventure. All the other games that we showed on the stream, I'll also link in the description of the YouTube version of this. I hope I did that last time. I'm pretty sure I did. But this is a game I recommend. I actually recommend most of the games on this list. I even recommend Elliot's Quest, even though the final boss is terrible. It just really, I did not like it, the final boss. I'm not going to say it ruined the game. Like the issues were piling up to that point, but the final dungeon's great, but the final boss just wasn't good.
You're recommending my game too?
Sure, it's free and open source, right? The only
I'm
one
assuming you're not recommending Julia Willis.
that one I technically did put as not recommended on my curator, and I still stand by that. There are aspects of it I think are interesting, which is what that is what a 2 out of 5 to me is that it still has redeemable qualities that make it worthwhile. If you're really into overanalyzing things, the story has some fun ideas about it, but yeah. All of the boss fights in the game are just progressively worse and worse, with the final boss just being the worst thing ever. But aside from that, it's competent, so it's just the bosses that are a problem. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and next week there will be no stream because I will be out of town. So for the Our Metroidvania podcast, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Yeah.